By special request from one of my YouTube subscribers, I'm going to show you in this series of videos how to code up a bidirectional client-server application. By bidirectional, I mean the server will be able to broadcast commands to the clients, as well as the clients being able to send commands to the server. In this particular demo app, the basic functionality is just that of an echo server, but you can modify the code to have clients send any type of command to the server and have the server act on that command by modifying one of the methods in the code. I'll start by laying out the design of the user interface for the server, and then the next video will show you how to code up the server, followed by another video that shows you how to design the client form. And then finally, the fourth video will show you how to code up the client functionality. The final video will show you how to test the client and the server apps together, okay, so that you can tweak the performance and make any changes to the code as necessary. Now, all this code is going to be on GitHub, so go to github/pulpfreepress and you'll find the repositories for the WinForm server and the WinForm client. So stay tuned. This is a great video. There's lots of cool stuff you're going to learn in it. Then let's get started. All right, for this application, I'll be using Visual Studio 2017. I'm creating a project for the server called WinForm server. It's a Windows Forms app. I'm using .NET Framework 4.7. Doesn't really matter much. I'm not using too many advanced features. And I've got create directory for solution. So and I'm not really changing any of the default stuff, right? So it powers up here. It'll give me a default window, and I'll just start with that, and I'll lay out the server user interface. This shouldn't take too long. Okay. Now there's our form. So when I start laying out a user interface, I usually do a mock-up, and you saw that in the intro of these things. So I'll just go ahead and pull in some toolbox components. The first component I like to work with is the table layout panel, and that's in the containers. So we'll take a table layout panel and just drag it over here. Now, one of the tips for, at least in my opinion, for quickly laying out a user interface using Visual Studio is not to anchor or dock your components until like towards the end, because it makes it harder to snag each individual component and put it where you want it. So I'm just going to kind of position that where I kind of want it, right there. Okay, but I'm not going to dock it or anchor it yet. Okay, but what I will do is I'll name these things as I put them in there. Well, I'm not going to name the flow panels unless I needed to access them. I'll just drag the control panels or the table layout panels in there just like this. And then I'm going to resize this just a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to grab another table layout panel, and I'm going to put one up here, and I'm going to put one. Go back to the toolbox, get another table layout panel, put one right here. Okay. And then I'm going to drag these out here like that. Take this one, drag it out. And over in the properties, which is down on the lower right hand side over here, I'll scroll up to bring it down so we can see a little bit more of the properties. So I've got the top one selected up here. I think I'll add another row just to get the look right. So I'm going to go over here to the properties. You could do all this in the code, but I tell you, Visual Studio makes it sure a whole lot easier. So right now you got the row count property. I'm going to make that 3. And you'll see that now this has 3 rows up here. Okay, we can resize them. Select the one below, and I'll do the same to that. Make that 3. Okay. Now the first big component I'm going to play around with is the text box to the left So these two columns over here to the left will be one big text box. So go back to the toolbox, go up to Common Controls, and go down to text box, and I'm just going to drag it over here. So when you first throw a text box in there, it's a single line. Okay, so we're going to go to Properties, and we're going to scroll up to Multi-Line. We're going to make Multi-Line true, like that. That way we can make it bigger. Okay, and then we're going to make it do row span. So we got to scroll down to the row span and make it span 2 rows. So we're going to bring that like this. Okay. Now that's a text box. Now we're going to give this text box control a name. I'm going to call this text box underscore status text box. Okay. And it could be read only. So we're going to scroll down to read only. Make read only true. Like this. And it needs some scroll bars eventually. So we're going to make vertical scroll bars. Okay. So you'll see these things kind of over here to the right. Okay. Now that we have that, I'm going to put in the start server and the stop server buttons. So back to the toolbox. Grab a button and just drag the button over here. That's button 1 right now. Grab another button, toolbox. There's a button right there. Now I'm going to kind of drag these things out, make them a little wider, and adjust the size. Ooh, not that. I want the size of the, there we go. I want the table layout panel. Bring it down just a little bit like that. Now I'm going to click on the rightmost button, which will be the Start Server, and we'll set the text of this button to say Start Server. So set the text property, and the name will be underscore. So this is the name of the control, underscore Start Server button. Just like that. Okay, so underscore start server. Now for button, the second button, since I'm up here at the top, I'm going to say underscore stop server button. So that's the name of the control. And go down to text. And just say stop server. Okay, so there we have start server and stop server. And we won't do the docking until we get the overall control laid out kind of the way we want it. The next two things we're going to add is the port text box, how you enter the port, and then a label that says listen on port. So I'm going to go grab a label. We'll do the label first. So here's the label. Grab the label, bring it over. So we have to position the label. Right now it's in the upper left-hand corner. So let's just start from the top. We'll call the name of the label port label, underscore port label. Okay, and then we'll go, let's see here. Column span, just 1, that's fine. Location, we don't need to mess with that. Don't need to mess with locked. Okay, we want text align. Text align will be, so if you see where my cursor is at in the lower left hand, that would be center for the text, or to the right over this way. Okay. Now for, okay. Now we're going to make that thing, I guess we'll go ahead and do the dock, or the anchor and the dock for it. So we'll come down to the dock property, and I'm going to dock it right in the smack right there, like that. So the text of this will be listen on port, colon, just like that. Okay, so now we have our label. And in this cell, see, these are cells, right? In this cell, I'm going to put a text box. So go grab another text box, drag it over, stretch it out a little bit. And I'll adjust the height just a bit on this table layout to kind of line, just to give it enough space, because I'm not going to make this text box multi-line. It's just going to be single line. So let's start with the name. This will be port text box, just like that. Come down to I'm not going to. I could dock this one, I believe. I don't need to move it around. So let's dock it. And I'm going to give it a default text of 5000 for the default port. We'll show you. I'll show you. You'll see how this comes in handy. You could put whatever default you wanted to. Now we're going to line the text up. We need to do text align. I want the text for this to be center, just like that. All right. Now at this point, you could actually run it. The buttons aren't connected to anything. We'll see how it looks. We might have to dock some things to make it look not so hideous, but we should get a form with something that looks kind of like this, and we can kind of gauge how things are looking. So it's got to compile, then it's going to run it. Like I say, there's no functionality. So here's what our form looks like right now. So this is an app, right? You could click on the buttons from every day from Sunday, but they're not going to do anything. We could also make, so we need to have this editable, so that's fine. Listen on port, okay, that's good. So the layout looks fine to me. We haven't docked these things, so that's why they're the size isn't exactly like I want right now. But before we do all that, we can go lay out the topmost piece. So up here, I want a label that says connected clients, and then a text box over here that we can put in some information to show you how many clients are connected. I'll start with the label. So we'll grab a label, drag this over here. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing to that label that we did with the other one. I'll give it the text. So this will say connected clients. Colon. Text align over to the right center. And the name of the control will be underscore connected clients label. Okay. Now click on that, and I'm going to dock it just so it looks good. Dock it in the center. Okay. This I'll probably choke up just a little bit, like that. All right, now I need a text box again. So lay out another text box. Drag it across. This is going to be connected clients text box. That's the name of the control, so I'll start there. And then I'm going to set the alignment. Text align. So text align will be center. And I'll put a default value. So text, I'll set the text on it. It'll just say 0. Okay. So that's how it'll look when it cranks up, right? You'll see that it has 0 clients connected. Now I can, let's see here. See, when you move these things after you space them, that's why sometimes it's good not to dock it. Okay, so that's lined up just like that. All right. I'm going to make this actually, I'll add another row. Okay, so here's another row down here. Okay. So I need 2 more controls. I need a button so I can send commands to the clients. So let's go ahead and drag a button over. I'll put that right here. And I'll scrunch it out. Okay, so the name of this button will be the send command button. This is the name. Now we're talking about the name of the control. Okay, send command button. The text of the button will be send command. Okay, I can bring that down. Well, when I dock it, that'll determine the final position and the size. All right. Now, in this space up here, I want to have where you enter the commands for the clients. So that's going to be a text box. So let's grab a text box, bring it over, and we're going to do the exact same thing to this that we did to the status text box. We're going to have to have a row span, a column span. We need a column span of 2. So come on up to column span 2. So sorry, it wasn't the exact same thing. This is a column span. And then it's got to be multi-line. Looking for the M's, multi-line right there. True. And bring this down. Okay. Okay, so let's make sure we get the name now. The name of the control is client command text box. You know, when you're laying out your user interfaces like this, right, you can name these things anything. This is just what names I'm sticking with and picked. There's going to be no text in this text box originally. The send command button, make sure we've got that. I think we've done all that. Okay, this is the... Okay, so we need to... I don't think we need any... scroll bars on that one. Okay, now that we have this, let's run it again and take a look at how the layout looks. I am not a user interface designer, as you can tell, and not only that, I'm not using menus. This is a very simple app, right? But it's clean. It looks like it's laid out fine. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and I'm going to dock these controls so that they fill up. Right now, let's see what happens if you resize them. See, they don't move, right, when you resize. So when we dock them, they'll move when you resize. So I'll stop that. Go back to the design. So I've got my command status. I'm going to go set dock on all these properties that aren't, these controls that aren't docked yet. So dock, fill. I'm using dock fill. That's dock filled. Dock fill. Even the back, these things in the back, like that should be docked as well. The table layout panels should be docked. So just setting the dock on these guys. Dock true. Okay, here on this one as well. That's got to be docked true. So this control has to be docked. Let's go back up to the D's here. Okay, that's dock filled right there. That's dock filled. Okay, dock fill. This is not filled, so let's go doc fill on this one. Send command button doc fill. Come down here. That one's docked. This one's not docked. Oh, that one is docked. Okay, doc fill. This one's not. So we'll doc fill. Once you do all this stuff, you can always go back and change it. This is not like the final say. I'm going to actually undock this because I'll show you what I... Okay, now then we have the big one. This one. We got to dock this one. So let's make sure we dock the big one. That's the Big Daddy table layout panel. Okay, now save it. Now let's see how it behaves with everything docked properly. Okay, the only thing we haven't done is we haven't set the name of our form. We'll get that in here in a second. So everything's flowing fine. Everything looks good. I'm not happy with this right here. See how that's down and this is kind of up? I don't think I docked that. I must not have. So let's close this. Let's fix that. So let's make sure we have the text align on. So that's middle right. That's fine. This should be docked. And it says doc fill. Okay. That says doc fill. Let's do this. Let's squeeze up. There we go. Okay. We're going to squeeze that up tighter. Okay. We can squeeze this to fill in these button sizes. All right. Make them about the same. All right. As long as you're happy, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Let's deal with the form. So I've selected the entire form now, and I'm going to set the text property on the form. So I want this to say WinForm server. And that changes the name up here on the form. Save everything, run it one more time. Okay, now this form has no functionality other than the fact that it displays. So where is this code, right? If you're new, if you're kind of new to this kind of stuff, where is this code? There's code behind here, right? You're designing a graphical user interface using Visual Studio's design tools. Let me show you where the code goes. Right now, you don't want to mess with this code. So we have to expand over here in the Solution Explorer. We're going to expand the form. And we're looking for the Form CS Designer CS, right? So you double click that, and here's the code for the form. So what Windows does, it creates a partial class called Form1. The Form1 that you're going to edit, I'll show you that in a second. But this is a partial class. So there's two Form1 classes. Files. There's two Form1 class files. The partial class, which is automatically generated, contains automatically generated code when you lay out your graphical user interface components. Now, if you go in here and delete something, your code will not work, right? There'll be an error in your code. You'll have to. That's why it's helpful to know how this stuff works underneath the covers. Okay, but all this code here was generated by Visual Studio. And you don't want to mess with this stuff, right? So we'll just collapse that. Collapse this. Okay, all this stuff is generated by Visual Studio. But when you're ready to actually start coding, you right-click over here to add your custom code. Now you could double-click one of these buttons and it would open up a suggested method name, right? I don't like usually doing that because sometimes I like putting my command handlers in different objects, right? Or in different classes. But in this example, I'll just put everything in the Form1 class. You right-click in this dark space or however you've got your theme set up, and you or click F7, say View Code. Now this is the class. This is the file that you edit this file all day long, okay? And in the next video, this is where I'm going to put the code to make this form come to life as a server application. So look forward to seeing you in the next video. Thank you for joining me.